How America was built, from wilderness to superpower. Before the flag, before the Constitution, before the White House, there was a continent, wild, unmapped, untouched by roads, by borders, by any name that we would recognize today. For thousands of years, civilizations rose and fell on this land, building cities, trading across vast distances, and developing their own systems of law and governance. And in just a few centuries, a scattered group of colonies, fragile, divided, and outnumbered, would rise to become the most powerful nation on Earth. This is how it happened. Chapter 1. A land before America. Long before any Europeans set foot here, North America was home to thriving civilizations stretching back thousands of years. In the Mississippi Valley, a city called Cahokia once rivaled London in population, with massive earthen mounds that still stand today, some larger than the base of the Great Pyramid of Giza. In the southwest, the ancestral Puebloans built multi-story cliff cities carved directly into canyon walls, structures so well engineered that some have survived for over 1,000 years. Hundreds of distinct nations spread across the continent, each with its own language, government, and way of life. The Haudenosaunee Confederacy united multiple nations under a shared system of law, a structure some historians believe may have influenced the founders of the United States centuries later. This land had history, long before it had a name. Chapter 2. New Beginnings. In 1607, English settlers founded Jamestown, Virginia, the first permanent English colony in North America. It nearly failed. Disease, starvation, and conflict pushed the colony to the edge of collapse within its first few years. Then, in 1620, a separate group of English settlers, religious dissenters seeking a new life, landed further north, at a place they called Plymouth. We know them today as the Pilgrims. Their survival depended almost entirely on help from the Wampanoag people, particularly a man named Tisquantum, who taught them how to farm crops suited to the unfamiliar land. These were not the triumphant beginnings often told in stories. They were desperate, fragile footholds. From these fragile footholds, something extraordinary began to grow. Chapter 3. 13 colonies, one spirit. Over the next century, English settlements spread along the Atlantic coast, eventually forming 13 distinct colonies, each shaped by its own economy and culture. Philadelphia, founded as a haven for religious freedom, grew into one of the largest cities in the entire British Empire, rivaling cities back in England itself. In New England, town meetings and local courts planted early seeds of self-governance and democratic thinking. Further south, plantation economies grew increasingly dependent on enslaved labor, a contradiction that would shape the nation for centuries to come. By the 1700s, these colonies had their own identity, confident, self-governing, and increasingly unwilling to be ruled by a parliament 3,000 miles away, in which they had no voice at all. Chapter 4. The Revolution. Tensions exploded. The Boston Massacre, where British soldiers fired into a crowd of colonists, the Boston Tea Party, where defiant colonists dumped an entire shipment of tea into the harbor, and finally, gunfire at Lexington and Concord, the first shots of a war that would change history. On July 4, 1776, the colonies formally declared independence, declaring that all men are created equal, endowed with rights no king could take away. Under George Washington, the Continental Army, underfunded, undertrained, and often on the brink of collapse, endured brutal winters at Valley Forge, where soldiers froze and starved for the cause of liberty. And against staggering odds, with crucial support from France, they defeated the most powerful empire on earth. In 1783, America's independence became official. Chapter 5. Building the Nation. The early United States was fragile, its first government too weak to function. In 1787, the Founding Fathers gathered in Philadelphia to write something stronger, the U.S. Constitution, a framework of checks and balances still in use today. But the nation's borders remained small, clinging to the eastern edge of the continent. In 1803, President Thomas Jefferson negotiated the Louisiana Purchase, doubling the size of the country overnight for less than 3 cents an acre. Lewis and Clark set out to explore this vast new frontier, mapping thousands of miles of uncharted wilderness. Pioneers pushed west by the thousands, driven by the belief that America was destined to stretch from coast to coast. Chapter 6. Gold, Rails, and Growth. The 1848 discovery of gold in California brought a flood of settlers westward, transforming the region almost overnight. In 1869, the Transcontinental Railroad connected the entire nation for the first time, turning a months-long journey into a matter of days. Factories rose in cities like Pittsburgh and Chicago. Inventors like Thomas Edison and Alexander Graham Bell electrified American life, introducing innovations that would change how the entire world lived, worked, and communicated. By 1900, the United States had become an industrial giant, one of the largest economies on the planet. Chapter 7. Becoming a superpower. 2 world wars proved America's strength on the global stage. American factories armed the Allies, producing tanks, ships, and aircraft at a scale the world had never seen. American innovation, from the assembly line to the atomic age to the moon landing in 1969, showed the world what this young nation was capable of. By the late 20th century, the United States stood as the most powerful nation in history, built not by accident, but by the relentless drive of people who refused to accept limits, who turned wilderness into cities and colonies into a superpower. Conclusion. From ancient cities lost to time, to a revolution that shook an empire, to a superpower that reached the stars, America's story is still being written. And maybe that's the most powerful part. This story isn't finished yet.